The ice in my glass had already melted when she raised hers. I wasn't supposed to hear it. She thought I'd gone home. But I was there, a few tables away, hiding in plain sight, watching the love of my life raise her cocktail in the air like she was celebrating a promotion. Only it wasn't about work. It was about me. About how I wasn't enough. To the man who thinks loyalty means checking the oil in my car and folding my sweaters, she said, smiling wide, and to the man who reminds me what real passion is. The table erupted in laughter. Even the bartender smirked. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. She clinked her glass against her lover's. He kissed her cheek like it was the most normal thing in the world. I sat frozen in the corner booth, my hand clenched around a paper napkin I twisted into a soggy rope. I had come there with every intention of confronting her, not in public, but quietly. I was going to ask her if she was really going to Molly's, like she claimed. But when I saw her walk in laughing with those strangers, I couldn't move. I stayed. I watched. And I heard everything. They toasted 3 times. Once to freedom. Once to new beginnings. And once, and I swear I'm not making this up, once to happily deleting the past. That's me. I'm the past. They knew. Everyone at that table knew about me. One of the women even joked, "Does he still think you're working late?" And Serena, my wife, my actual wife, with a ring I bought after saving for a year and proposing under fireworks like a fool, she nodded and said, "Oh yeah. He thinks I'm helping a friend through a breakup. He's probably home right now walking the dog and warming up leftovers." That part hurt more than the cheating. She didn't just betray me. She turned me into a joke. A side character. A story they told to feel powerful. After 20 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, left cash on the table, and walked straight into the freezing night air. My fingers were numb, but not from the cold. From humiliation. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even sad. I was hollow. Like something had been scooped out of me with a spoon. She texted me that night. "Running a little late, babe. Molly's really going through it." I didn't reply. I stared at the blinking cursor on my phone like it might type something for me. It didn't. Instead, I started planning. Not revenge. Not escape. Just truth. I needed to know how far it went. I needed to see how many nights were lies. How many places were touched by her other life. How many friends knew. How many smiles were fake. I wasn't ready to confront her. I wanted evidence. Not just to make her confess. I needed to make myself believe it was real. Because in that moment, watching her raise a toast to my stupidity, part of me still hoped I was dreaming. What I uncovered over the next few days. Let's just say, the bar scene was nothing. The real betrayal hadn't even begun yet. 3 days after that night at the bar, I found a receipt in the trash can under the bathroom sink. That might sound small, but it mattered. See, we don't throw things away in there. Not receipts, not wrappers, not even tissues unless we're sick. That bin is usually empty. So why was there a receipt from a wine shop across town, dated the same night she claimed to be with Molly? And why was it for 2 bottles of Bordeaux and a pack of Belgian chocolates? She doesn't drink Bordeaux, and she's allergic to dark chocolate. But her lover, I later found out, was a sommelier. A detail I wouldn't have uncovered if I hadn't been quietly spiraling into the kind of pathetic detective work only a desperate husband can justify. I spent the next few nights not eating, not sleeping, just scrolling through her social media, which she rarely updated, and comparing it to the subtle clues in her phone's shared calendar. I never wanted to invade her privacy, but it stopped feeling like her privacy the moment she turned me into a punchline in front of strangers. She was careful. I'll give her that. Her lies weren't improvised. They were rehearsed, layered, airtight. She told Molly she was helping her mother move. Told her mother she was visiting me at work. Told me she was going to Molly's. And when I confronted Molly, yes, I did that, she stared at me like I'd just told her aliens landed in her driveway. "We haven't seen each other in months," she said. "Is Serena okay?" Okay. I didn't even know how to answer that. Instead of going home that night, I sat in the car parked 2 blocks from the house and watched the front door. The lights were off. Then at 11:42 p.m., a car pulled up. It wasn't a cab. It wasn't an Uber. It was a glossy black sedan, and she stepped out of the passenger seat, smiling. She kissed whoever was driving. She kissed him. Not a peck. Not a goodbye hug. A long, slow kiss that said this wasn't new. That kiss shattered something in me I didn't know was still intact. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, motionless, as if moving would make it real. As if stillness could rewind time. She walked into the house, turned on the porch light like nothing happened, and texted me. Hope work wasn't too exhausting. Left some soup on the stove for you. Soup. She kissed another man, and then warmed soup for me. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. The next morning, I couldn't look at her. I told her I wasn't feeling well. She didn't question it. She just nodded and said, "You've been distant lately. Everything okay?" The audacity of that sentence made me nauseous. She tilted her head and touched my arm like I was some fragile creature she was trying to soothe. It was almost clinical, the way she handled me, with just enough affection to keep me sedated. So I nodded. I told her I was fine. And then I went to the basement and cried like a child. I actually bit down on a towel to keep from making noise. That's how low I was. I couldn't even allow myself the decency of falling apart in my own house. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't have a plan. But something had shifted in me. She wasn't just cheating. She was living a second life in plain sight, and I was the decoy. The cardboard cutout she used to justify her schedule. The man who walked the dog and paid the bills so she could sip wine with someone who made her feel wild again. And the worst part? She didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. And I was only just beginning to understand the scale of what she'd done. Because later that week, on a Thursday that started like any other, I found something on our shared laptop that would change everything. And this time, it wasn't a receipt. It was a video. Thursday morning started the way most of them do. She left before I woke up, said she had an early client meeting. I pretended to still be asleep, just so I wouldn't have to see her face. I couldn't do it again. Couldn't hear her humming in the kitchen, pretending nothing was wrong, like she wasn't walking around with my heart in her purse next to a lip gloss and another man's touch. When I was sure she was gone, I finally dragged myself out of bed and made some coffee I couldn't taste. I wasn't planning on going through her laptop. I really wasn't. But as I sat on the couch, sipping from a chipped mug we got on our honeymoon, I noticed her MacBook sitting on the coffee table, half open, blinking. It had gone to sleep but wasn't shut down. It was like it was daring me to look. I told myself I just needed to check one thing. She had booked our rental car through her account for an upcoming family reunion. I needed to confirm the time. But when I woke the screen, I noticed an AirDrop window still open. It had been sent from a phone I didn't recognize. The file name was simple, Tuesday. I shouldn't have clicked it. I know that. But everything in me, every part of my gut that had been whispering that something wasn't right, screamed that I had to see what it was. So I opened it. The video wasn't long, less than 2 minutes, but it changed everything. It was filmed inside a hotel room. I knew the layout, not because I'd been there, but because Serena once showed me a picture of it from a company conference last year. The same golden curtains, the same navy headboard, the same view of the river. She had said it was boring, sterile. Not even worth a selfie, she joked. In the video, she wasn't bored. She was glowing. The camera was propped up somewhere near the foot of the bed. The man, I still didn't know his name, was setting down 2 glasses of wine on the nightstand. She was already under the covers, laughing, her hair tied up, no makeup, no filter. Just her. The real her, the one I hadn't seen in months. Maybe years. And then, she said something I'll never forget. Not because it was cruel, not because it was explicit, but because it was said in that casual, offhand tone people only use when they feel completely safe. She took a sip, leaned back on the pillows, and said, "I wish I could freeze time right here. Just this. You and me. No Daryl. No guilt. Just us." The way she said, "no Daryl," it didn't sound like she was freeing herself from a bad marriage. It sounded like she was taking off a pair of old shoes. Like I was a burden. A detail. Something to shake loose before she got truly comfortable. I didn't finish watching. I slammed the lid shut so hard the screen flickered. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt in the way I expected. It was something deeper. Something hollow. I felt like the last page of a book no one ever finishes reading. I sat there for hours, just staring at nothing. The room was so quiet, even the dog seemed confused. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run out into traffic. But all I did was make another pot of coffee. As if caffeine could patch a broken reality. She came home that evening with Thai takeout and a plastic smile. She kissed the top of my head and said, "You look tired, babe." I just nodded. My mouth couldn't form words anymore. Not around her. Not after seeing that. And then, as she unpacked the food, she asked, "Did you check the rental car times today?" I left the laptop out in case you needed it. That's when I realized she wanted me to see it. She didn't care if I knew anymore. Or worse, she wanted to humiliate me. This wasn't about hiding an affair. It was about showing me how powerless I'd become. And if that was her goal, it worked. Because that night, for the first time since I was a teenager, I found myself sitting on the floor of our bathroom, knees pulled up to my chest, wondering what the hell I was still doing in that house. But the truth is, I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Because what happened next, what I discovered about her so-called lover, her job, and her plan, it went far beyond cheating. She wasn't just replacing me. She was erasing me. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I lay in bed next to her, listening to her soft breathing while my mind spiraled deeper into places I never thought I'd go. Every creak in the walls sounded louder, every second on the clock slower. I kept imagining that hotel room, her relaxed body under those crisp sheets, the smirk in her voice when she said my name like it was a problem to be erased. I stared at the ceiling for hours, quietly drowning in a silence that felt rehearsed. She had kissed me earlier like everything was fine, like I was the same idiot she'd always come home to. But I wasn't. Not anymore. The next morning, I did something I thought I'd never do. I took the day off work. Called in sick. I couldn't face another spreadsheet, another Zoom call where I'd pretend to be functional while everything underneath me was slipping. I told her I just needed rest. She didn't even pretend to care. Just told me, don't forget to feed Oscar, referring to our dog, and left in a blur of perfume and perfectly brushed hair. I stood in the hallway long after the door closed, wondering how she managed to look so pulled together while I was unraveling like thread. I went into her home office. She rarely worked from there, mostly used it as a place to store junk she didn't want in the bedroom. But that day, I combed through every folder, every drawer, every pile of paper, not to snoop, but because I needed something, anything that would give me a grip on what was happening. That's when I found the red leather binder. It was tucked beneath an old conference tote bag, stuffed between magazines. Inside were printed emails, travel confirmations, and a stack of handwritten notes I could barely bring myself to read. The emails were between her and someone named Jace. Not a coworker, not a client, just Jace. No last name, no signature. But he knew everything about me, about our home, even about my work schedule. There was one page that cracked everything open. A list. Numbered. Titled in her handwriting. Next phase. Stop wearing ring. Start sleeping over. Introduced to inner circle. Separate finances. New apartment. D moves out or finds out. Final step. Clean slate. I just stared at it. My name reduced to a single letter. My entire marriage condensed into 7 bullets on a checklist. It wasn't a love affair anymore. It was a campaign. A strategy. I wasn't being cheated on emotionally. I was being removed logistically. Like an outdated app she couldn't uninstall fast enough. I flipped through the notes in the back. Some were just scribbles, dates, vague locations, initials I didn't recognize. But then I saw a note that simply said, if he finds out early, pivot. Don't argue. Let him dissolve on his own. Let him dissolve. I think that was the moment something snapped in me. Not in a loud, dramatic way. It was quiet. Surgical. Like a thread inside me being cleanly cut. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was displaced. I was a placeholder in a life she had outgrown, and she wasn't even trying to hide it. She was watching me fade. Slowly, methodically. And worst of all, she was fine with it. I copied everything. Scanned the notes, photographed the pages, backed up the emails to a drive she didn't know existed. Not because I was planning anything, not yet, but because I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. That all the gaslighting, the subtle digs, the passive indifference weren't in my head. That evening, she came home like she always did. Tossed her keys in the bowl by the door, kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and asked, "Did you rest?" I said I did. She smiled. Then she sat across from me and started scrolling through her phone, sipping her wine like we weren't inches from collapse. Then something odd happened. She asked me what I thought about moving. Moving? I said, confused. Yeah, you've always hated the commute. And I was thinking, fresh start, new neighborhood. Closer to your work. Better coffee shops. I stared at her. This was it. The pivot. She knew I'd seen something. Or maybe she just sensed the energy had shifted. Either way, she was activating a new script, gently nudging me toward the door, making it feel like my idea. I played along. Nodded. Said, that might not be a bad idea. Inside, I was shaking. Not with fear anymore, but with the quiet burn of a man who finally sees the cage for what it is. She was trying to erase me, but she didn't realize I was already writing my own ending. I don't know when it fully clicked, when I stopped being just a man in denial and became something colder, sharper, quieter. But it must have happened somewhere between that ridiculous list of hers and the moment she sat across from me, smiling like none of it mattered, as if she wasn't in the middle of phasing me out like some piece of software past its expiration. Serena thought I would just go along with it. She believed I was too passive, too soft, too wrapped in my own silence to ever resist. And honestly, a month earlier, she might have been right. But she made one critical mistake. She underestimated the man she was trying to erase. After her little fresh start suggestion, I acted exactly how she wanted. I played my part, told her she was right, that I had been stressed, that maybe a new place could help us reconnect. She looked genuinely pleased, kissed my cheek with the mechanical warmth of someone who doesn't even feel guilty anymore. "You're such a good man," she said. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just clarity. The next day, I started copying files. Not just the notes and emails from her red binder, but everything I could reach. Bank statements, shared passwords, iCloud backups. I accessed her Google Maps timeline and downloaded weeks' worth of data. I even placed an old phone of mine in the glove box of her car, running a location-sharing app she wouldn't recognize. It was embarrassing how easy it was. All those nights she accused me of being boring, of lacking spontaneity. She never realized I was the one keeping the whole damn machine running. I'd built her comfort, and now I was going to dismantle it. A few nights later, she had another one of her late yoga classes. I didn't follow her. Not physically. I didn't need to anymore. I waited until she was gone, then opened her laptop again. She'd left her mail open this time, as if daring me to look. She must have assumed I wouldn't. Or maybe she thought I didn't care enough anymore. There it was, an email chain with Jace, spanning back 6 months. The earlier ones were cautious, vague. But by the middle, they were openly planning weekends, hotel bookings, complaining about how slow I was to catch on, laughing about the stories she fed me. There was one that nearly made me punch the wall. "He's like a walking blanket. Always there. Always soft. Just laying there, waiting to be needed. I'm tired of being grateful for something I didn't ask for." She called me a walking blanket. And I just sat there, rereading it a dozen times like maybe the letters would rearrange themselves. But they didn't. That's who I was to her, background comfort, noise reduction, a placeholder. And still, I didn't confront her, because I had bigger plans. See, I wasn't just looking for proof of betrayal anymore. I was trying to understand the depth of the lie. It wasn't just an affair, it was a total rebranding of her life. She was already setting up viewings for apartments under her name alone. She was quietly liquidating our joint savings into her personal investment account. She'd created a new Gmail, a new mailing address tied to a P.O. box. She'd even submitted change of address paperwork, for herself only. The plan was simple: bleed me dry, ghost me, and present the divorce as my decision. She'd frame me as distant, closed off, emotionally unavailable. She probably already had people on standby to hear her side of the story. So I started preparing a little story of my own. I made backups of everything, created a private folder with time-stamped evidence, screenshots, audio recordings from conversations I baited her into having. I kept a journal, one that would read as heartbreaking, honest, and legally useful. I talked to a lawyer, quietly, paid in cash, explained everything, and he didn't flinch. Said it wasn't the first time he'd seen something like this. Women preloading the narrative, assuming the man won't fight back. But I wasn't going to fight loud. I was going to fight smart. Then came the final trigger. It was a Sunday morning. We were making pancakes. Well, I was making pancakes while she scrolled on her phone pretending to be involved. Out of nowhere, she said, "Do you ever think about what life would be like if we'd never gotten married?" I nearly dropped the spatula. I turned and said, "What do you mean?" She didn't look up, just shrugged. "I don't know. You ever wonder who we'd be now? Like, if we hadn't locked ourselves into all this. All this." That's how she referred to her life. Like it was a junk drawer she couldn't shut. I smiled. I nodded. I flipped the pancakes and pretended to think it over. But inside, I was done. No more doubt. No more waiting. I knew what she was doing. The thing about betrayal that nobody tells you is that it doesn't land all at once. It seeps. Quietly. Slowly. Like water through cracks in your ceiling. Until one day the whole thing caves in, and you're left soaked, shivering, and trying to pretend you didn't notice the drip months ago. That Sunday morning, the one with the pancakes and her throwaway, What if we'd never married? Comment was the final drip. And I knew, right then, the ceiling was going to collapse. I just had to decide whether I'd be underneath it or standing off to the side, dry, watching it fall. I waited until she left the house again. Another charity networking brunch she had to attend. I stayed back under the excuse of needing to finish some yard work, which she didn't question. She rarely looked outside, let alone noticed what I was doing with the hedge clippers. As soon as she pulled away, I opened the drawer in our kitchen, the one where we kept mail we never sorted. Beneath expired coupons and unopened bank statements was a stack of envelopes with her name only. One of them caught my eye, an apartment lease. It was signed, dated 3 days earlier. She hadn't even told me. It was for a loft across town in one of those faux industrial high-rises with too much glass and not enough soul. The lease began next month. And the emergency contact listed? Jace Monroe. That was the first time I saw his full name. Jace Monroe. No address, just a number. I wrote it down. Googled him. Found a photography portfolio filled with fake woke imagery and shirtless mirror selfies disguised as emotional honesty. The guy had over 30,000 followers and called himself a visual intimacy architect. I wanted to throw my laptop through the window. This was the man she was risking everything for? A man who called couches emotional landscapes and took pictures of women half his age with captions like lost in her light. But then it hit me. She wasn't risking everything. She'd already replaced it. I was just a leftover she hadn't thrown out yet. And that's when I stopped waiting. That afternoon, I took the journal I'd been keeping, printed out the key pages, and matched them with my digital folder of evidence. The screenshots, the flight confirmations, the hotel receipts, the photos of her and Jace in places she'd claimed to be somewhere else entirely. I burned them all onto a private USB drive. Then I made 3 copies and left them in safe places. One with my lawyer, one in a bank deposit box I opened that day under my name only, and one, sealed in an envelope, I taped under the top drawer of my work desk, the same drawer she never touches. That night, she came home smiling. She brought Ty again, Pad CEW, her favorite. She put on soft music and wore the hoodie I gave her on our 4th anniversary. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe, or pain. But all I felt was distance. I watched her across the table, chewing noodles and humming to herself, and she didn't even realize I was gone. Not physically, emotionally. I was already out the door in my mind, already locking it behind me. She asked me what I thought about taking a weekend trip together before the summer rush. I nearly laughed. She was trying to soften the transition, or maybe make herself feel like she hadn't entirely abandoned me. I said, that could be nice, and left it at that. But in my head, I was already packing my things. The final piece came 2 days later. I received a call from my lawyer. He'd done a background check on Jace, just to be thorough. Turns out, the guy had done this before. Twice. Both women had been married. Both relationships ended with the husbands being painted as emotionally abusive, classic manipulation. He'd even gotten money out of one of them. A fake investment deal that vanished overnight. I stared at the report for a long time. She wasn't just cheating with a narcissist. She was following a pattern. One that ended with me being the villain in her new story, while she played the misunderstood woman finally choosing happiness. And maybe that's what pushed me. Because I realized. I wasn't angry that she cheated. I was angry she thought I was too weak to survive it. Too boring to fight back. Too invisible to matter. So I made the decision. Not to scream. Not to cry. Not to beg. But to write my own ending quietly, surgically, and with the kind of precision she never expected from the man she thought she could phase out. The next time she brought up moving, I told her I'd been thinking about it too. I said maybe it was time we had some space. And her smile, that fake, smug smile, told me she thought she'd won. There's a certain kind of silence that comes right before impact. It's not peace. It's pressure. Tense, invisible, humming in the walls like electricity before a storm. That's what filled our house in the days after I told her I was open to space. I watched her carefully, pretending to be the man I'd always been, mild, agreeable, half asleep, while she quietly began celebrating. It was in her posture, the casual way she came home late without bothering to text, the fact that she stopped pretending to hide her giddiness. Every time her phone buzzed, she glanced at it like someone who was done pretending, and I kept smiling. Because she didn't know, the game was already over. I had moved some of my things out under the pretense of decluttering, boxed up winter clothes, carried them to my car while she was out doing errands. I shut down the joint account and moved my share to a new bank. I rerouted all mail to a P.O. box. I took my name off the lease 3 days before she intended to move out anyway. She just didn't know it yet. The thing about being invisible is, once you learn to live in the background, you can see everything happening in the foreground without ever being noticed. The final piece I needed wasn't in her phone or her email. It was in her own words. So I gave her the stage. That Saturday night, I told her we should have a real talk. I suggested we go to that rooftop wine bar she loved, the one where she first told me she felt like we were drifting but could find our way back. That was 6 months ago. Now I used her own symbolism to lure her in. She showed up dressed like it was a date. I complimented her, told her she looked amazing. She blushed, maybe for real, maybe just out of habit. We ordered drinks, and I let the night unfold like it was normal. Talked about the weather, her work, even laughed at one of her dumb stories. Then I leaned in and said, "Do you think we're still good for each other?" She hesitated. That was the crack I'd been waiting for. I watched her carefully as she built her narrative, the one she'd rehearsed 1,000 times. About how we changed, how sometimes people grow in different directions, how she wanted clarity and honesty. It was a breakup speech dressed in kindness, but underneath it was the same bullet point strategy I'd read in her notebook. Except this time, I recorded it. Not to humiliate her, just to have it. To remember how calm someone can be when they're ripping your life apart with polite words and a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. And then came the moment. She said, "I've already found a place. It's a studio just across town. I think I need to explore who I am outside of us." I smiled and replied, "I know." She blinked. "You do?" "I've known for a while, Serena. I just wanted to see if you'd be honest." She froze. Her glass stopped midair. That was the first time in months she looked genuinely caught off guard. Then I said, "By the way, Jace Monroe? He's got quite the history. Did he tell you about Sandra? Or Megan? Or how he once filed a false harassment report to avoid paying rent?" Her color drained. I leaned back and let the silence spread. "You really thought I'd just roll over, didn't you?" She tried to recover. Said something about this not being about Jace and how I was twisting things. But the damage was done. I wasn't attacking her. I wasn't accusing her. I was revealing the truth in front of her like a mirror she couldn't avoid. "I'm not angry," I said, "but I won't be used either. So here's what's going to happen." I laid it out, calmly, clearly. We'd file for separation. No drama. I'd sign papers. But I wouldn't be paying for a thing. She'd forfeit her claim to the house, which I'd already begun transferring into a trust. She'd lose access to the joint investments. The evidence I had, the emails, the messages, the timeline of her affair, and the conversation she just gave me voluntarily, would be held in reserve. I wouldn't publicize it. I wouldn't shame her. But if she tried to take anything she didn't earn, I'd release it. Not to ruin her. Just to protect myself. She stared at me like I was someone she'd never met. Maybe for the first time. I wasn't the walking blanket she joked about. I was something else now, someone who saw her clearly. Not as a monster. Just as a woman who thought I would never stand up. When we left the bar, she didn't speak. She got in her car and drove off without looking back. And when I got home, I took the envelope from the drawer and burned it. Not because I didn't need it anymore, but because she did. That silence would haunt her more than any confrontation ever could. She didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. In fact, I didn't expect to see her ever again in that house. And honestly, that was the first time the silence felt like mine. Not a punishment. Not a symptom of something broken. Just quiet, unburdened, weightless, still. For so long I had been afraid of what life without her would look like. But in that moment, I understood. I'd already been living without her. She'd been gone long before the affair, long before Jace Monroe, and the wine bar and the notebook with her bullet points. She had slowly replaced intimacy with convenience, and I let her, thinking love was something you protect by holding your breath. No more. 3 days later, I filed. My lawyer was swift, precise. Serena didn't contest anything. Maybe because she couldn't. Maybe because she knew I had already built the lifeboat and climbed aboard while she was busy setting fire to the ship. She signed the documents without a fight. And just like that, something that once took vows and rings and tears unraveled quietly. No courtroom, no spectacle, just release. I moved out of the house 2 weeks later. Not because I had to, I legally retained the rights to it, but because I needed a fresh start that didn't smell like her shampoo. I found a small place across the city, not flashy, not expensive. Just mine. No curated aesthetics. No framed inspirational quotes on the wall. Just space to rebuild. The first morning in my new apartment, I made a real breakfast. Eggs, toast, actual coffee, not the bitter reheated sludge I'd grown used to. I ate slowly, watching the sun stretch across the kitchen tiles. Oscar, my dog, lay at my feet like he was finally relaxed. No tension in the air. No secondhand guilt sticking to the walls. Serena texted me once, weeks later. Hope you're doing okay. Sorry again. I was just lost. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Just closure. Some books you don't need to reread. Some endings don't need explanations. I didn't need her to admit she'd been cruel or thoughtless or selfish. I already knew. And I also knew I had survived it. Months passed. I picked up new routines, hiking on Sundays, cooking actual meals, reconnecting with people I'd let drift. I started therapy, something I once mocked and now deeply respect. Not because I wanted to heal from her, but because I wanted to understand me. How I got so quiet, so passive. Why I thought being loyal meant being invisible. The answer hurt, but it also helped. I was scared. Scared that if I ever spoke too loudly, I'd be left behind. But now, I speak. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And somewhere in the middle of all that change, I found peace. Not the kind that needs meditation apps or scented candles. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing I didn't need to win her back, prove anything, or burn the world down to reclaim my place in it. I just needed to walk away. And when I finally did, the world didn't fall apart. It opened up. So no, I didn't get revenge. I got something better. Freedom. And for the first time in years, when I look in the mirror, I recognize the man staring back. He's not perfect. He's still soft. Still quiet. But he's whole. And he'll never be erased again.